The house sits in Laurel Canyon with its windows glowing yellow against the darkness, and inside, the air feels too thick to breathe. It's past 11 on a Tuesday night in February, and 5 men in suits are sitting in Jackson Browne's living room drinking whiskey they didn't ask for, and don't really want. They're here because a contract has been broken, because money has been spent, because 14 months have passed since Jackson promised them an album, and they still have nothing to show for it except silence and excuses and a growing hole in the label's budget that someone will have to answer for. Jackson stands near the fireplace with his hands in his pockets. He's wearing jeans and a worn denim shirt that's seen better years, and his hair is longer than it should be, uncombed, falling across his face in a way that makes him look younger than he is and older at the same time. He hasn't said much since they arrived. He let them in, poured their drinks, gestured toward the furniture, and then retreated to the corner of the room like he's trying to disappear into the wallpaper. He knows why they're here. They all know why they're here, but no one has said it out loud yet, and the weight of that unspoken thing is filling the room like smoke. The living room itself tells a story. There are papers scattered across the coffee table, sheets of lyrics with lines crossed out and rewritten and crossed out again. An acoustic guitar leans against the couch, its strings dusty. Empty coffee cups sit on the windowsill, rings staining the wood underneath. The room has the look of a place where someone has been living and working and falling apart all at the same time, where the boundaries between creation and collapse have blurred into something unrecognizable. Richard breaks the silence first. He's the oldest of the 5, gray at the temples, with a voice that's learned how to end conversations without raising itself. He sets his glass down on the coffee table and leans forward just slightly, his elbows on his knees. "Jackson," he says, "we need to talk about where we are." Jackson nods but doesn't speak. He's watching the fire, the way it moves, the way it consumes the wood without making a sound. The flames cast shadows across his face, and in the shifting light, he looks like someone who hasn't slept in days. "We've been patient," Richard continues. "You know that. We gave you time after everything that happened. We didn't push. We didn't pressure. But it's been over a year now, and we're in a position where patience isn't something we can afford anymore." A younger man sitting on the couch shifts forward. His name is Michael. He's sharp-featured, expensive watch, the kind of energy that makes rooms feel smaller. "We don't have a single finished track," he says, "not one. And the delivery date was 6 months ago. We're not talking about a delay anymore. We're talking about a breach of contract." Jackson finally looks up. His face is pale in the firelight, shadows under his eyes like bruises. "I know," he says quietly. "Knowing isn't helping us," Michael says. And there's an edge to his voice now, something sharp and frustrated. "Knowing doesn't get the record made. Knowing doesn't give us something to sell. We've got investors asking questions. We've got distributors threatening to pull out. We've got radio programmers who've moved on to other artists because we can't give them a release date." Another man, seated in the chair by the window, speaks up. His name is David. He's been quiet until now, but his voice carries a kind of exhausted frustration, like he's been holding this in for months and can't anymore. "We've got radio slots waiting. We've got distribution deals on hold. We've got marketing people who've been sitting on campaigns for 8 months with nothing to do. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand what it costs to keep an entire machine running on nothing?" Jackson looks at him, and for a moment something flickers in his eyes, not anger. Something deeper, something that looks like shame. "I'm not trying to hurt anyone," he says. "That's not the point," David says, and his voice is softer now, but no less serious. "Intent doesn't matter. Results matter. And right now, we don't have any. We have studio time we've paid for and can't use. We have session musicians on retainer who haven't played a note. We have producers calling us asking when they can start work, and we don't have an answer." The 5th man, sitting in the corner in a chair that's slightly apart from the others, finally speaks. His name is Tom. He's younger than Richard, older than Michael, And he's been with the label longer than any of them. He was there when Jackson's first album came out, when no one knew who he was, when the songs were just songs and not commodities. Jackson, he says, and his voice is different from the others, quieter, less accusatory. We're not here to hurt you. We're here because we're worried, not just about the money, about you. Jackson's jaw tightens. He looks away, back at the fire. I'm fine, he says. You're not, Tom says simply, and we all know it, and that's okay. But we need to know what's happening. We need to know if you're going to be able to finish this, or if we need to make other plans. Richard raises a hand, cutting through the tension before it can build any higher. Let me be clear, he says, his voice calm again, controlled, the voice of someone who's done this before. We're not here to attack you. We're not here to threaten you. We're here because we need to know what's happening. If you can't finish this record, we need to know now, not next month, not when it's too late to do anything about it. Now, Jackson turns back to the fire. For a long moment, he doesn't speak. The room holds its breath. The only sound is the crackling of the wood and the distant hum of traffic somewhere far below in the canyon. Then, softly, almost too quietly to hear, he says, I can't write about anything else. No one responds. They're waiting for him to explain, but he doesn't. He just stands there, staring into the flames, his shoulders tight, his hands still buried in his pockets. Paul, who's been sitting on the far end of the couch, leans forward. He's the one who signed Jackson to the label in the first place, who believed in him when he was nobody, who fought to get him the deal that's now bleeding money. Talk to us, Jackson, he says gently. Help us understand. Jackson's jaw tightens. He closes his eyes. When he speaks again, his voice is so quiet they all have to lean in to hear him. The songs are about her, he says. All of them. Every single one. And I don't know how to finish them because finishing them feels like I'm saying goodbye, and I'm not ready to say goodbye. The room goes still. They all know who he means. They read the same papers, heard the same rumors, attended the same quiet funeral where no cameras were allowed, and everyone wore black, and no one knew what to say. They know about the late nights and the hospital visits and the way Jackson disappeared for 3 months after it happened and came back different, hollowed out, like something essential had been carved away. I sit down with the guitar. Jackson continues, his voice barely above a whisper now. And I play the chords and I sing the words, and it's like she's in the room. Like I can feel her listening, and for those few minutes, it's like she's not gone. And then I stop and the silence comes back and she's gone again. And I can't do that. I can't keep bringing her back just to lose her over and over. I can't keep opening that door just to have it slam shut in my face. Michael looks at the floor. David stares at his hands. Richard's expression doesn't change, but something in his eyes softens, just slightly. Tom shifts in his chair, uncomfortable, like he's witnessing something he wasn't meant to see. Paul stands and walks closer. Not too close, just close enough that Jackson knows he's there. Jackson, he says gently, I can't imagine what you're carrying. None of us can. But the music isn't going to bring her back. You know that. And not finishing it isn't going to keep her here. I know, Jackson says, and his voice cracks. I know that. But it's all I have left of her. The songs, the memories, and the melodies. The way a certain chord progression reminds me of the way she laughed. The way a lyric captures something she said once when we were driving down the coast with the windows open. If I finish them, if I let them go, if I put them out into the world, then they're not mine anymore. They're everyone's. And she becomes a story instead of a person. And I don't know how to do that. Richard stands now. He walks over to the fireplace, standing beside Jackson, but not looking at him. He stares into the fire, too, his hands clasped behind his back. For a moment, he doesn't say anything. Then, quietly, he begins to speak. My daughter died, he says. His voice is steady, but there's a weight behind it that makes everyone in the room stop breathing. She was 16. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. She was coming home from a friend's house. It was a Saturday night in June. Jackson turns to look at him. Richard's face is lit by the fire, and in the flickering light he looks older than he did a moment ago. That was 7 years ago, Richard continues. And for the first year, I couldn't go into her room. I couldn't touch her things. My wife wanted to pack them up, donate her clothes, turn the room into something else. But I wouldn't let her. I told her we needed to keep it the way it was, that we needed to preserve it. But what I really meant was that I needed to keep her there, as long as the room stayed the same, as long as her books were on the shelf, and her poster were on the wall, and her shoes were still by the door. I could pretend she was just out, that she was at a friend's house, or at school, or at the mall, that she'd come home eventually. No one speaks. Michael's face has gone, still. David is looking at Richard like he's never seen him before. Tom has his hands folded in his lap, his head bowed. But she didn't come home, Richard says, and his voice is quieter now, softer. And keeping the room didn't bring her back. It just kept me stuck. It kept me living in a place that didn't exist anymore. It kept me from being present with my wife, who was grieving too. It kept me from being present with my son, who'd lost his sister and needed his father. It kept me from being present with myself. He finally looks at Jackson. You think finishing the songs means letting her go, but it doesn't. It means letting yourself go. It means giving yourself permission to keep living even though she can't. It means honoring what you had by not letting it destroy what you still have. Jackson's eyes are wet, but he doesn't look away. I don't know if I can do that, he says. You can't, Richard says simply. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe not for years, but you can do the next thing. You can finish one song, and then another, and then another, and maybe by the time you're done it'll hurt a little less, or maybe it won't. But at least you'll have moved. At least you'll have given yourself the chance to be something other than stuck. Paul steps forward. What do you need, he asks, to finish, not to be perfect, not to have all the answers, just to finish? Jackson looks at him. His face is raw, exposed. Like every defense he's ever built has been stripped away. I need to know. It's okay if it's not perfect, he says. I need to know that if I put this out into the world and it's raw and broken and incomplete, that someone will understand why, that someone won't judge me for not being able to make beauty out of pain, that someone will hear it and know that I tried. We understand, Paul says. We're here, we're listening, and we'll wait, not forever. But we'll wait. Michael stands. He walks over to Jackson and looks him in the eye. There's no sharpness in his face now, no frustration, just something that looks like recognition. 3 months, he says. We'll give you 3 months. You check in every 2 weeks. You let us hear what you're working on. You don't disappear. You don't shut us out. And at the end of 3 months, we need something. Not perfection. Not a masterpiece. Just truth, just something real. Jackson looks at each of them. Richard, Paul, Michael, David, Tom. They're not walking away, not yet. 3 months, Jackson repeats, and the words feel heavy in his mouth, like a promise he's not sure he can keep, but knows he has to try. Richard extends his hand. Jackson takes it. Don't waste it, Richard says, and it's not a threat. It's a plea. It's the voice of someone who knows what it's like to lose something you can't get back, and who doesn't want to see someone else drown in that same grief. They leave one by one. Michael first, stopping at the door to look back, to nod once, a gesture that says more than words could. David next, his face still troubled but softer. Tom lingers for a moment, his hand on Jackson's shoulder, a brief touch that says, I remember when you were different, and I believe you can be again. Paul is the second to last. He stops in the doorway and turns. You're not alone in this, he says. We're not just your label. We're people who care about you, and we want this to work, not just because of the money, because we believe in what you do. Then he's gone, and it's just Richard left. He stands in the doorway, his coat over his arm, his face unreadable. "The album my daughter loved most was yours," he says quietly. The second one, she played it until the tape broke. She knew every word. She used to sing along in the car, off-key, and it drove my wife crazy, but I loved it. I never told you that. Jackson doesn't speak. He can't. "Finish this one," Richard says, "not for us, not for the label. For the people who need it the way she needed that one. For the people who are sitting in their rooms, right now, stuck, who need to know that someone else understands what it feels like to lose everything and still have to keep going." Then he's gone, and Jackson is alone. He stands in the center of the room for a long time, listening to the silence. The fire has burned down to embers. The whiskey glasses sit abandoned on the table. The papers are still scattered everywhere. The crossed-out lyrics, the half-finished melodies. He looks at them, really looks at them, for the first time in weeks. Then he walks to the piano. It's in the corner, covered with more papers, more coffee cups, a layer of dust on the keys. He sits down. His hands hover over the keys for a moment, trembling slightly. And then, slowly, carefully, he begins to play. The melody is hesitant at first, fragile, like something that might break if he pushes too hard. But as he plays, it begins to take shape. It's not the song he was trying to write before. It's something new, something that hurts in a different way. And as his fingers move across the keys, he feels something shift inside him. Not healing, not yet, but movement. The first crack in the wall he's been building around himself for over a year. He plays for an hour. Then 2. The melodies come and go, some of them staying, some of them disappearing into the night. He doesn't try to capture them all. He just lets them exist. And slowly, painfully, the songs begin to take shape. 3 months later, the album is finished. It's not what the label expected. It's quieter than his previous work, sadder, more raw. The production is sparse, just voice and guitar and piano, with occasional strings that sound like they're mourning something. There's no single that radio will play on repeat. There's no anthem that will fill stadiums. But it's real, it's honest. It's the sound of someone trying to survive their own grief. When it releases, it doesn't sell like the others did. It doesn't climb the charts or win the awards. The reviews are mixed. Some critics call it a masterpiece of emotional honesty. Others call it self-indulgent, too personal, too painful to listen to. But it finds the people who need it. The ones who are grieving. The ones who are stuck. The ones who are sitting in dark rooms at 3 in the morning wondering if they'll ever feel whole again. Let her start coming in. Not many at first, but slowly, steadily. From a woman in Ohio who lost her husband to cancer and couldn't listen to music for a year until she heard this album. From a man in Seattle who'd been trying to write about his brother's suicide for 5 years, and finally found the courage after hearing Jackson's songs. From a teenager in Tennessee who played the album on repeat after her best friend died and felt for the first time like someone understood. Years later, Paul will say in an interview that it's the most important record he ever worked on. Not the most successful, not the most profitable, but the most important. The one that reminded him why he got into this business in the first place. Michael will admit, quietly over drinks one night, that he almost walked out, that he was halfway to the door when Richard started talking about his daughter, and something stopped him. He doesn't know what. Just a feeling that if he left, he'd regret it for the rest of his life. Richard will never speak about it publicly, but he'll keep a copy of the album in his office, and sometimes late at night when the building is empty and the city is quiet, he'll play it. And he'll think about his daughter, and he'll think about Jackson, and he'll wonder if music can save people, or if it just helps them survive. Tom will leave the label 2 years later, tired of the business, tired of the politics, tired of treating art like a commodity. But he'll keep that album, and when people ask him why he got into music, he'll tell them about that night in Laurel Canyon, about the moment he realized that sometimes the most important thing you can do is just stay. Jackson will keep making music. Some of it will hurt less, some will hurt more. He'll write songs about love and loss and hope and despair. He'll tour. He'll perform. He'll smile for cameras and sign autographs and do interviews where he talks about his process and his inspirations and all the things artists are supposed to talk about. But he'll always remember the night 5 men walked into his house, and the way the room felt when Richard told him about his daughter, and the way Paul's hand felt on his shoulder, and the way something inside him broke open just enough to let the music out. The last song on the album ends with a single piano note that fades so slowly you're not sure when it stops. You just realize eventually that it's gone. And in that silence, there's no answer, no lesson, no resolution. Just the quiet understanding that sometimes finishing something is the hardest thing you'll ever do. And sometimes the only way to honor what you've lost is to let the world hear what it cost you. The night ends. The fire goes out. The lights stay on, and somewhere, in the stillness between the music and the silence, something begins again. Not healing, not forgetting, just the slow, painful work of continuing, of taking the next step, of finishing the song even when you're not ready to let it go, of trusting that somewhere someone needs to hear it, someone who's sitting in a dark room, alone, wondering if they'll ever feel whole again. And maybe, just maybe, these broken songs will be the thing that helps them take their next step too.